Tervist, kallid sõdurile kuulajad ja vaatajad. Tänane episood toimub inglise keeles, et tagada vastastikune arusaam. We are now entering the 4th year of the full-scale war and 12th year of the war in Ukraine, a time where physical strength is tested, but the endurance of the spirit becomes a ultimate frontline. Today, we are discussing the moral anchor. We are looking at the vital mission of those who live and serve in the trenches, not to fight, but to ensure that no soldier has to face the darkest corners of combat exhaustion, grief, or isolation alone. To help us understand this mission, we are honored to welcome a very special guest, Captain Rostislav Vysotchan, a military chaplain serving as acting Deputy Chief of Military Chaplaincy Service, with 12 years of experience in chaplaincy. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a big pleasure to have opportunity to be with you and to speak to all of you. And for Ukrainians, it's very important to share the experience, and especially during this long term of total war, which we are fortunately experiencing.
So to start our conversation, in a war that has lasted for so long, how do you define the role of a chaplain?
Yeah, this is a really good question. The chaplain is the military priest who has to, we use this sentence, has to bring heaven down. And all works of the chaplains has to connect the soldiers, the unit, and the commander to the God and to the God grace. So the main goal of chaplaincy service is actually to take care about the spirit of the soldier, unit, and commander. So our chaplains try to do their work in such way and try to use many different approaches, especially today where war is changing so fast. We try to find new ways how to provide religious support to them.
What does a typical day actually look like for a chaplain? Is it more about listening or like providing logistics or just being there?
I would start from also the description of the new reality which we are facing today, because this is really important to understand how the usual day looks like for the chaplains. I would start that today war has changed significantly, and we face it with new challenges, because for us we see after the creation of, for example, brief history review, after the creation of United Nations, the word war has gradually disappeared from the political discourse, actually. Any act of aggression against another state is considered as a start of a war. Therefore, the term war is often replaced with different phrases. For example, a special military operation, anti-terrorist operation, preventive strike, and so on. All this creates confusion in understanding of rules that were originally written for the traditional war. And even for the morality of the war, all tradition of just war tradition, just war theory, which is created by different scholars, different philosophers, different theologians, which give you a right to defend your life. This is like the Christian point of view about the war, about the military service. Everything was written for the traditional way of waging war. But today, especially in the Ukrainian context, we see the Russian-Ukrainian war, how war is changing. And many rules are really broken. Even we can see many new investigations. For example, the Sean McFate, in his book, The New Rule of War, he actually criticizes the classical way of understanding the war And he said that traditional wars have one problem today, because no one fight that way anymore. In this sense, war begins when peace is broken. In today's, we have to consider unconventional war, not symmetrical war, whereas peace and war can be together. This is like two different lines, parallel lines, and they will never cross, but unfortunately today they can be crossed, because this is the new reality. And how do we have to provide the religious support? How do we have to lead our soldiers? How do we have to be moral guidance for the soldiers in this situation? We actually have an answer for this. We should be more adaptive. Adaptive means the adaptability is the key words that help us to do our job. Also, I would like to say about the situation, the real situation in Ukraine now. That's also very important to note it. No one could ever have imagined this big war in Europe that lasting 4 years. And when we speak about this 4 years, we mean only the full-scale Russian invasion. But because in reality, for Ukrainians, war began in 2014 with the occupation of Crimea and some part of eastern Donbass. So today we are witnessing a true tragedy that has intensified even further in recent months, because very big number of civilians killed and wounded. And I can say that even at the beginning of the invasion in 2022, the situation was not as dramatic as it is today, especially this winter time, particularly in the Ukrainian capital. I'm from capital of Ukraine, I'm from Kyiv, and I can prove that we call it today Holodomor. This is the new word. I hope you know the Holodomor. This is the genocide carried out through the artificial famine. And now, however, we are facing another form of genocide connected to winter cold. Because this winter has been the hardest in the last decade. Temperature in Kyiv have dropped to minus 20 degrees Celsius. And the Russians methodologically destroying the vital infrastructure of Ukrainian cities, including the capital. So Kyiv, one of the largest European capitals, has nearly 4 million residents. Heating and electricity system are centralized. Each district has a thermal power plant that supplies electricity and hot water to residents' building. And for example, in main big number of districts, there no gas, and people cook with electricity as well. So I would like to explain that today all rules, this is the main actually issue of the just war tradition, international humanitarian law, which was created after this just war tradition. Then warrior has to fight with the warrior. You cannot fight with the civilians. You have to be like the honest on that. And we see in our situation that all rules for traditional war are destroyed by Russian side. And that's the reality. And of course, for our perspective, as a chaplains, we try to keep the morality of the soldiers and try to convince them that we have to keep the international humanitarian law and law of war. But we understand and we realized that we need some new rules and new regulations because a whole system of international defense shift and I can say and destroyed as well. So the normal day for the chaplains, it depends from the unit. in which you belong. I cannot just explain the whole situation of the Chaplain's Day, but it depends from which branch of armed forces are you from. So if you're the land forces, you infantry brigade chaplain, you has a lot of work because you only one person for the whole brigade. We have the system in Ukraine because we don't have enough chaplains for now, so you can have the big multi-dimensional parish, military parish, 5,000-6,000 people. So, and you only one chaplain, and you so busy in order to provide the religious support, to organize the pastoral care, to also work in the hospital with wounded soldiers, also to take participation in some also funerals and the honor the fallen soldier. Also, the main part of the job of the chaplain's work is also to take care about the families of the soldiers, families of military members, and in this we close connected for the communication and cooperation with the religious organization, the civilian churches, who help a lot on that and really try to cover this part, because for the military chaplain in the who is present in the combat area with his unit, it's not enough time for that. So it depends from which branch of the armed forces are you from, and your day will be so busy because the wartime you always under, you can say, under fire, because the war zone in Ukraine is so big. We have different lines, we have different part of the fronts, but when you are the part of the military, you always under fire.
So you mentioned that soldiers are being helped by you, like morally. Could you maybe give us an example of that?
Yes, we have 4 chaplains activities actually. This is like main structure of the religious support in armed forces of Ukraine. The first one, this is the pastoral care. In this part, you as a chaplain works as a priest, as a pastor. So you organize the prayers, you organize the liturgy, the masses, you celebrate the sacraments, you organize the personal meeting with the soldiers, the crisis counseling as well. So you always be nearby in order to be effective. So sometimes commander will ask you to do something. Sometimes you have to plan by yourself your job. But pastoral care means that you be present, the ministry of presence, and you work as a normal priest, but inside of the military. The second part of the activities is religious educational work. Actually, during the wartime, this has become a smaller part, because that's about organizing the training, some educations about religious, about philosophy, about theology, about different religious views, philosophical views. At that point, that's maybe more chaplains who are working in training center, they provided this part. But for the generally infantry chaplain, this is maybe will be smaller part. The third part is social charitable activities. So that has connection with communication with religious organization, and that's about all kind of supply from psychological point. I mean, organizing the some working with the family members groups. For example, some kind of supply from the churches, and organizing some program for recovery or rehabilitation program. We used to organize the summer camp for the children of military personnel, and also the work with the families of fallen soldiers as well. So that side, the chaplain has to use and has to have good communication with the local churches and try to integrate them in this field. And the most military part of the activity is advising the command. This is really more military chaplain's work, because you have to be ready to give the advice to your commander. And of course, they have some special agreements how you have to do it. Normally, you are the ethical and moral advisor of the commander, and time to time the commander can ask you help. Also, the second one, you have to report to the commander about the religious situation within the unit, and what you have to do, what you have to provide, what do you need actually in order to provide the religious support in proper way, and how does this religion situation contributes to the mission of the operation. It's also the part of the advising. And also, you have to give the information about religious situation in the deployment area, for example. For Ukraine, it's very sensitive because, as all of you remember, and 2014 year, when the first stage of war started, with occupation of Crimea and this east part of Ukraine, the many Ukrainians who lived in that area, they consider themselves as pro-Russians people. And of course, many different churches were Russian churches. And that's why, if you will know in advance this religion situation and how these Russian churches contribute to the invasion in the future, that's will be good to know in advance. So that's why your advisement and your counseling to the commander is also important. So we have the chaplain's pizza. We call it chaplain's pizza: pastoral care, religious educational work, charitable activities, and also advising the commander. So that's main structure. How do we provide religious support to the soldier, unit, and commander?
Could you maybe share with us a specific memory or moment or story from the past that gave you hope or made you smile?
Okay, you just want me to say some my personal experience?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have many of them, especially I have good friends of mine who who are veterans. This is two guys, soldiers from my civilian parish, actually, where I have been a priest before I became a chaplain. So in that time, I just remember different situation and different conversations and different time when we have been together. So time to time, because in that time it was 2015, 2016. I was a volunteer chaplain. I have to mention that the professional chaplaincy service in Ukraine started only September 6, 2022. So this is already invasion started. Big full-scale invasion started, and then we establish the chaplaincy service professionally. and before all of us been volunteer chaplains, and it's mean that we came to the troops and to the units time to time, and just was trying to explain that in the hardest situation, when my friends have been many times, because they are now they wounded two times actually, each of them, and they became a stronger believers in the war, and I see now, and I have seen how they grew up in their spirituality during this different crisis situation in which they face it. So, and they always remind me now that like when you don't see the hope, when you don't see the light in your life, when crisis is so big, when you start pray, when you start communicate with the chaplain, when you start just maybe small conversation by phone. Even I receive the messages from them every day, and sometimes I feel that their families didn't know about their situation, but I knew better, and I was not able to even talk about that because it was confidentially. And I was praying, and then time to time I visited them. And now I just want to say that they are strong believers, and because of the war experience, because of the crisis experience. So that's also the question of spiritual resiliency. I would just tell something about that, because whole chaplain's work should be focused to create and to like train the spiritual resiliency of the soldier. Actually, this is something very close to Ukrainians, because today we receive many questions. How do you resist so long? How do you stand so long time against the big enemy? How it's possible? And yes, we can say that from Ukrainian perspective, when we talk about resilience, we always think about strength, power, but we should say that this is about some inner strength. This is not about physical strength. So resiliency, this is like the inner strength that give you a chance or possibility to keep a floor. I don't know how to translate it. It's not about that you will never fall, but it's about then you will rise when you do. And the spiritual resiliency for us, this is the inner strength that comes from your integrity. You as a person, this is from Christian point of view, and actually from religion point of view, many of the religion will say the same, that the human being is created by God in His image, and it has like three levels or three parts which are integrated together: the body, soul, and spirit. The body is understandable. The soul, this is your psychology, because in you will see the Greek name of the soul, that will be psyche. And psychology, this is the science of the soul, you know. And psychologists, they should be one who has to take care about your soul, like psychology. And the spirit, this is the high level. The spirit, this is the grace of God, which God sent it to you when you was created. And this spirit gives you opportunity to be open to the transcendental level, to be open to the some faith mystical experience. And when you integrate together your three parts, the body, the soul, the spirit, it means that you will be able to open your inner power, and you will be able to like train your physical resistance, your psychological resistance, and also spiritual resistance. When you will be able to integrate it together, you will get this spiritual resiliency, which will lead you to the integrity of the person and also to the development of the person. And that's the answer why we can be able to stand as Ukrainians, because that's lead us also to the brief history of Ukrainian nation. I can say that this is like the part of Ukrainian identity today, because from many years I know a bit history of Estonia, and I realized that you have also the same part like we have. I'm talking about occupation, repression, when the war awards, for example, Ukraine, church, God, could not be spoken openly. In that time, the spirituality became a language of resistance. And today we are who we are because of the past experience also gave us this inner strength. So from the chaplain's point of view, also the answer is that the chaplaincy work is important to make this resiliency, and also to give you opportunity to grow, to be a harmony person. That's our main goal.
So, as we've heard today, the role of a chaplain in this war is about more than just faith. It is about radical act of staying steady when everything else is in motion. To our guests, thank you for your time, for your service, and for giving us a glimpse into the spiritual and moral frontline of Ukraine.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you and to speak to all of you. For us, it's big pleasure and big honor. And God bless Estonia, and God bless Ukraine. Thank you.
God bless. And for our listeners, thank you for joining us for this special English language episode. This has been Sõdurileht. Stay resilient and stay tuned.